Yeah, we're live. We're live on hair. Sorry. Okay. Good evening, good morning. What time is it, Borna? Well, we've got lots of time.
When I used to work in a watch shop, they would always ask me that, and I would just go. Gestures broadly.
Yes, it is midday in Australia, and today we are exploring two sub-collections of Edifice, which is a sub-brand of Casio that we're getting to know.
Exactly. It's sort of a sub look into the brand, and it's split into sort of two categories.
Yep.
Classic with a twist, quartz chronographs, and then the complicated stuff. It's all very technical.
And look, broadly speaking, Edifice, we've learned, is the professional sort of grade of Casio watches, and not so much in the traditional sense. It's professional in the sense that they're designed to be worn by professionals, not in their specific fields, but just people who are in offices and wanting nicely finished, elevated Casio watches. The common thread between the two, though, Borna, is
Motorsport.
Motorsport.
And with many collaborations in the past, what they're really focusing on now is this sort of race car vibe.
And getting as many design cues from race cars.
Exactly right. And some of them are a lot more overt than others, and we'll sort of go through them as we go through these.
Okay, to get right into it, we're going to start with this one here because I know it fits actually very well.
Yeah, it does fit you quite well. So to reel off some specs and the quite confusing model name, it is the EQS 930 NIS, believe, which goes with the Nissan Nismo collaboration. That's right. So 47.5 millimeters with this one, with a 52 millimeter lug to lug. So quite a large watch, though it seems to work quite well on your wrist. It
does, and I'm a 7-inch wrist, and usually those specs would terrify me and I'd run screaming from the building, but because of the integrated strap, it fits really snugly. This is totally viable for a 7-inch wristed person who wants to go large.
Exactly right. And it sort of works. Sporty chronograph, large, legible. It makes sense to go with slightly larger dimension.
It does, and we're ripping through some of the features of the watch. We have a really shiny bezel that looks to be polyceramic, but it's not.
But it is not. It is an ion-plated bezel, so it will offer some sort of...
Ion, as in I-O-N.
I-O-N,
yes. Not iron-plated.
Not iron, no. It is stainless steel underneath. There is some iron there, I guess. But this sort of ion plating will offer a bit of scratch resistance, not as much as ceramic, but also it doesn't come with the cost associated with ceramic. So, but it does look really nice, and it's executed quite well.
Yeah, we have, in terms of the dial configuration, we have a carbon fiber dial.
Exactly.
Which has a solar accumulator underneath that, which is something we've seen from some Swiss brands this year that's been pretty exciting.
That's right. And they managed to give it this it's a nice piece of carbon fiber. It's not subtle at all, but they still managed to keep the solar technology there, which is quite cool.
Cool, and in terms of the sub-dials, we've been nutting this one out. There is a 10-minute counter at the top left, which stops at 10 minutes. It isn't a retrograde. But the interesting thing about it is the use of color on that.
That's right. So the color on it really, again, ties back into that race car theme. So when you have a titanium exhaust on a race car, when it gets heated, it will develop this really, really beautiful blue, purple, sometimes even gold color. And that's what we see on there. It's quite subtle, but on that, what we initially thought was a power reserve indicator, it's really apparent in that specifically.
Elsewhere, we have a 24-hour counter.
Exactly. So, your classic time, the day-night indicator. So, if you're traveling overseas, it's an easy reference if you can't look outside for whatever reason.
And then we just have a 1-second chronograph at 6.
That's right. So something interesting with these that confused me at the start, the central seconds on a chronograph is normally used as the chronograph hand. With these, they flip the script and they actually use a sub-dial as the chronograph counter. Quite interesting. I can't recall seeing that too many times before. So
that's that one that we like this one a lot because there's a lot of thoughtful detail. There's also a little Easter egg at 23.
Exactly. So 23 is the number that Nissan, or Nismo, I should say, their race team has used, in Le Mans, in Super 500, even while they were racing in Bathurst, where Godzilla came from. It's a play on words in Japanese, and with my extensive knowledge of Japanese, I have figured out that... Yes, thank you. Yeah.
You can't respond.
No, I can't. I know zero Japanese except these two words. So to cut the story short, 2 is Ni, 3 is San. I don't know why I'm counting up to 2. You put the 2 together, you get Nissan.
Yeah.
So
really thoughtfully executed piece. The motorsport tie-in is everywhere. That is the sort of higher end of the quartz chronograph selection.
That's right.
Coming in at half the price is another quartz chronograph, which is the EFR 573.
It is exactly the same module as in the EQS for this one here. But yeah, like you said, almost half of the price basically, less than half. But with a lot more of a traditional look really. If someone told you sporty chronograph, this is kind of what you would think of.
Yeah.
Really nice bracelet. It is a bit jingly jangly, but again, it reminds me of that sort of 80s feel. It is quite comfortable on wrist. I've tried this one on earlier.
And some of the specs of this, again, 100 meters water resistance. We've got a mineral crystal glass, which you'd expect.
And you've got a 3-year battery life on this one. This one is not solar, so that's something we should mention. That's probably why there is such a reduction in price. But again, 3-year battery life will be plenty.
All right, so we're getting to the end of town that allows us to flex a little bit more of our watchmaking analysis muscle.
We like complication.
Yes, we love complication and we love features, we love stories to tell. Edifice does well-finished watches, elevated Casios. Quartz chronographs have some really nice on-wrist features in terms of the fit and feel and look of the watches, but as we get towards these ones, there's a lot more function, and there's actually what I would consider to be really a market-leading edge to Casio in terms of their solar technology that other brands in the Swiss world are catching up to now, but really these guys are quite strong in this way.
Exactly right. I mean, they were sort of the front runners in solar technology. Other brands still have difficulty catching up, meeting production standards and things like that.
Yep.
The one we'll actually talk about first, funnily enough, doesn't have that solar feature, but it does offer a lot more features that we see on these top-end models. Hot off the press, like you like to say.
Yes.
Just came in this morning.
Doesn't even have an app interface yet. This is the ECB
30, that's right. ECB 30 coming in at $300.
Yep.
That sort of lower price one with all of these features, but no solar, like we said. It will still connect to your phone, and it will actually connect to your calendar app and then remind you when it's time to do things. So you don't have to reach for your phone, it'll just come up on one of these lovely displays here.
That's cool. So if we're seeing a trend here across both collections, it's that the battery models are in that 300 Aussie price range and the solar models are in that 500 price range. Is there anything else to say about this one before we really flex our talents?
I mean, again, you've got that LED illumination that sort of goes across all of these more complicated models. You have a perpetual calendar, you have 5 alarms, and 15 seconds per month accuracy, which is quite impressive. I mean, it is a quartz watch, but you know, it stays updated to your phone, so you'll never really have to bother with it.
Well, as we get to the solar models at the top here, I do just want to say the reason this caught my eye is because we've just come back from Watches and Wonders, and there was all this talk about the solar accumulator technology of one particular brand that has released a watch that has a transparent dial, allowing this, what is for them a Swiss version of the Citizen Eco Drive in this watch. So I'm very attuned to the notion that a dial can be a solar accumulator and that it can effectively be drawing in light from real and artificial sources. So tell me more, Borna, because I'm in the zone for that.
I mean, I completely agree. I mean, if you're going to do a quartz watch that does have all of these extra features, if you want it to be as autonomous as possible, you might as well do solar. In general, it's energy that we should be striving towards anyway, so having it in a watch is fantastic. Right, these two. Tough solar, like you mentioned, sort of Casio's signature solar technology. They managed to hide these solar cells in the watches quite well, whether that be in the sort of honeycomb grill pattern on the dial or the sub-dials themselves.
Yep. And again, that mesh is a reference back to the motorsports.
Motorsport cars, but especially with this one here, this is the EQB 1200. It's integrated subtly. The ECBS that I've been wearing is a bit more overt when it comes to this sort of motorsport tie-in, but this as sort of an everyday piece would be great. As far as the features themselves go, from that solar, you have up to 7 months on a single charge, and if you just throw it in a drawer somewhere, accidentally forget about it, it'll take for over a year and then be ready once you come and pick it back up. It'll enter this power saving mode. So yeah, long battery life. And again, we have the standard LED illumination, 5 alarms, chronograph, perpetual calendar. But once you connect them to your phone, you can access 300 world time cities. You can use that funky Find My Watch
Let's do it again.
feature.
Let's do it again. I'm like a 6-year-old inside, but yeah, there is this constant communication with the phone.
Yeah. Need to give it a bit of time.
It's always that.
There it is.
Yeah.
It's always great. It's always great. I've heard it so many times. I've had this watch over the weekend, and yeah.
It never got old.
No.
And one thing I'm noticing that's quite interesting about these top-of-the-line solar models here is that whereas in the quartz chronograph, the solar quartz chronograph was actually thicker than the battery-powered version by, what did you say?
About a millimeter.
About a millimeter. These are actually thinner than the battery-powered.
9.8 millimeters.
Yes, so under 10 mil. So they're very, very slim for all that functionality, which is pretty cool.
That's right. And they actually managed to avoid, when you have a large watch that's quite thin, often it wears flat on the wrist. I call it dinner plate.
Yep.
But these actually managed to avoid that with relatively short lugs and a really good bracelet integration.
So it's been quite a novelty for us, pardon the pun, to dive into a collection that is entirely non-mechanical.
True.
But I think that the part of this that caught my eye when this brief came across the desk to explore these watches was, again, they're talking about multi-motor movements. So there are movements. There is, in fact, a lot happening inside these watches, but it's just a very different sort of world for us, isn't it?
Exactly, that's right. And even though these watches might not appeal to the mechanical snob who just quickly dismiss these because they're quartz, I think every watch that deserves highlighting should be highlighted. Someone who might not be familiar with these, they might be perfect for them. They don't want to bother with winding or having to service anything or anything like that. As professional, everyday pieces, these are fantastic.
Yeah, and they also can make you dance. So I think this is obviously going to be our outro. Thanks for watching Time+Tide. If you have any music requests, we can't meet them because we only have one song.
Yeah, I hope that's not copyrighted because then we're in trouble.
We'll see you soon.